27-year-old Dana Satterfield owned and operated her own beauty salon off the State Highway 221 in Roebuck, South Carolina. She was also the mother of 2 children and had recently separated from her husband Mike. At around 6:30 p.m. on the 31st of July 1995, she bought a bottle of cleaning fluid from a door-to-door saleswoman named Shirley. At 8:11 p.m, Shirley passed by Dana's salon, saw her cleaning up and waved to her. She then went on to visit 2 other stores. At 8:30 p.m, Shirley returned to the salon to wait for her ride home when she heard strange noises coming from inside. She then saw the lights turn out, heard a very loud sound, and saw a man jump out one of the windows. She ran to a nearby liquor store to call the police. However, she crossed paths with the man in front of the liquor store. Fearing for her safety, she ran towards the street to flag down a motorist. When that was unsuccessful, she ran to the nearest house and called the police. A deputy sheriff arrived at the salon and found Dana's body in the closet. She had been beaten, raped, and strangled. Authorities ruled out robbery as nothing appeared to have been stolen. Her husband Mike was investigated and eliminated as a suspect. Authorities believe that the killer was a predator and possible serial killer who may have stalked her. Another witness named Ken Smith later came forward. He was driving past the salon at 8:40 p.m. on the night of the murder when he saw a suspicious man nearby. The man was standing next to a car and gave him a dirty look. Based on the time frame and description, it is believed he was the killer. Despite the witnesses, no one was ever arrested in her murder. A $50,000 reward was offered for information in the case. Police first suspected that Dana's estranged husband Mike was the killer. His fingerprints were found on the water heater, which was next to her body. However, he told police he installed the water heater. It is also noted their breakup was amicable. Furthermore, he did not fit the description of the suspect. They also looked into the possibility that he had hired someone to murder her. However, they couldn't find any evidence to support the theory. He was no longer considered a suspect because of the brutal way she was killed did not match a professional hit. Police suspect that the killer may have stalked Dana. They also believe that he was a predator and possibly a serial killer. A composite sketch was made of the suspect, who was 18 to 25 years old in 1995, 5'6" to 5'9" tall, and around 145 to 170 pounds, with blonde or light brown hair. They believe he drove a Ford Bronco with custom rims and out-of-state license plates. After investigating thousands of leads, in October of 2005, authorities arrested a local man named Jonathan Christian Vick and charged him with Dana's murder. He was also charged with kidnapping and criminal sexual conduct. Authorities have investigated Vick back in 1995, when he was 17. They didn't have enough evidence to connect him until witness, his friend David Pace, came forward. He claimed that on the day of the murder, Vick told him he was going to meet with Dana that night. David told police that Vick had threatened to kill him if he told anyone about him visiting her that night. David was overcome with remorse years later after meeting with Dana's daughter, so he then decided to go to the police. Authorities matched semen from Dana's body to Vick's DNA. It was discovered that Vick also matched the physical description of the suspect and owned a Ford Bronco with custom rims. He also had been a customer at Dana's salon prior to her murder. His girlfriend claimed that after the murder, he drove her to the salon and said that if she didn't listen to him, she would end up like that woman. Furthermore, while he was in the Marines, he assaulted several people and was known for having a violent temper. At Vick's trial, the defence noted that a pubic hair on the body did not match Vick. However, it was noted that the murder took place in a men's bathroom, meaning that the hair may have been left by a customer. In December of 2006, he was convicted of the charges and given a life sentence. In 2010, he was placed on prison lockdown after he assaulted another inmate. He would not be eligible for parole until 2035. Vick was also a suspect in the 2002 disappearance of Michelle Whittaker until she was found alive and well in 2008. He was also a suspect in the disappearance of his girlfriend, Heather Sellers. Missy Munday was a 15-year-old honours student and a member of the Future Homemakers of America. She lived in Hancock, Maryland with her family. According to her mother Phyllis, she only left home to go to church and ball games. In 1986, a man in his early 20s named Jerry Strickland arrived in the area. He claimed that he was looking for a property that he wanted to convert into an orphanage. He contacted the Mundays, asking about the ownership of the nearby house. Phyllis felt that Jerry was a smooth talker and did not care for him. Missy was intrigued by him. They began seeing each other. Each time he visited, he brought her a gift. According to her friends, he gave her the attention she wasn't receiving at home. She went out with him after school and lied to Phyllis, claiming that she was with friends. She regularly snuck out of the house at night to see him. He told her that he had a tragic past and that his wife and child had died in a terrible accident. On the morning of the 17th of April 1986, Missy left home to catch the school bus. However, instead of doing so, she was picked up by Jerry and left the state. She had no idea that everything she had been told was a lie, that he had a wife and child that was still alive. He was also writing bad checks, had a serious prison record, and had been convicted of malicious assault. During this attack, he had raped and nearly stabbed his sister-in-law to death. Missy and Jerry settled in Springfield, Michigan, and had a son named Jamie together. She kept in touch with some of her friends in Maryland, but didn't tell her family where she was. She told her friends that she didn't care about her family anymore except for her older brother and grandfather. She claimed that she went with Jerry because he took her away from her family. Her friend Sherry noticed they never kissed or held hands and claimed he wasn't very affectionate. To make ends meet, she got a job as an assistant manager at a nearby gas station. She became friends with the 38-year-old Elmer DePue, the courier for the oil company who picked up the cash receipts from the local gas stations. On the morning of the 11th of May 1987, Elmer came to pick up the money from the station when he was near the end of his route. He was never seen alive again. About an hour later at 11 a.m, the station was discovered deserted and the front door locked and his car still in the parking lot. Inside, the safe was found open and over $10,000 was missing. Authorities believe that Missy and Jerry robbed Elmer when he entered the station and opened the safe. They believe Jerry handcuffed Missy and Elmer together to make him believe that she was also a victim. He then took him into a wooded area a few miles away to show that he wasn't going to hurt her. He then shot Elmer twice in the back of the head. His body was found the next day, 20 miles from the station. The morning after the murder, Jerry and Missy were seen in Pontiac, Michigan, where they bought a truck using small bills. For 2 hours, she sat with an auto salesman alone and didn't tell anyone about the murder. This led authorities to believe she was willingly involved in it. Her family and friends are shocked that she could be involved in such a crime. At the time, Jerry was wanted for armed robbery, kidnapping and murder, while Missy was wanted for questioning in the case. The case was first aired on a program called Special Number 5 on the 5th of February 1988. Within minutes of the broadcast, 20 viewers called the police to report that Missy and Jerry were living in Moses Lake, Washington. 7 hours later, they were arrested at a friend's house. Incredibly, they had watched the broadcast and were waiting for the police to arrive. During the time on the run, Missy and Jerry had another child. On the 12th of February that same year, they were sent back to Michigan to stand trial. Jerry was interviewed by Unsolved Mysteries and insisted they were innocent. However, Missy later stated at the trial that although she didn't witness the murder, he confessed the crime to her. In exchange for her testimony, the murder and kidnapping charges were dropped. She served 7 months in a juvenile home for armed robbery and was released when she turned 19. She then moved back in with her parents and children. Jerry was convicted of murder, kidnapping and armed robbery, and is serving 2 consecutive life sentences without parole. Dennis DePue was a 46-year-old American Coldwater resident and property assessor. He was married at the time to 48-year-old Marilyn, who was a high school guidance counselor. They raised 3 children together. However, there was a lot of tension in their marriage. He became withdrawn and accused her of turning the children against him. She often told friends that she was unhappy and wanted a divorce. Finally, in 1989, after 18 years of marriage, Marilyn filed for a divorce. She told her attorney that Dennis was trying to ruin her life and would not let her make decisions on her own. He tried to keep the marriage intact, however, but the divorce was finalised in December 1989. He was granted bi-weekly visitation rights, but the children didn't want to spend time with him. He was given access to the guest house, which he used as an office, but seemed to use this as an excuse to maintain control over his family. Marilyn later changed the locks on the doors, but he managed to find a way to enter the home. On April 15, 1990, Dennis arrived at the home to pick up 2 of the children. His younger daughter, Julie, had already refused to go with him. When he went inside, Their son, Scott, was reluctant to go. When Marilyn tried to talk to him, he became angry and started yelling at her. He then grabbed her and pushed her down the stairs. At the bottom, he continued to beat her, even after the children pleaded with him to stop. The older daughter, Jennifer, ran to the neighbour's house to call the police. Dennis then carried the seriously injured Marilyn back up the stairs. He told the children that he was taking her to the hospital. They, however, never arrived there. An immediate and widespread search began for them. Later that afternoon, siblings Ray and Marie Thornton were going on a Sunday drive near Coldwater when a speeding van passed them. They noticed that their license plate began with GZ. They didn't pay much attention until a few minutes later. As they passed an abandoned school, Marie noticed the driver carrying a bloody sheet behind it. Minutes later, the van pulled up behind them and rode their bumper for several miles. Finally, Ray turned off the highway. They noticed that the van pulled off to the side of the road. They turned around and noticed the driver changing the license plate. They also noticed blood on the passenger side door. They decided to return to the school, where they found the bloody sheet in an animal hole. Tyre tracks at the school belonged to Dennis's van, and the blood on the sheet was Marilyn's. Based on the evidence, it appeared he was the killer. However, it wasn't until the next day this was confirmed. Highway workers discovered the body near a deserted road. She had been shot once in the back of the head. A few days later, Dennis sent several bizarre, rambling letters to family and friends. In them, he tried to justify Marilyn's death. He sent a total of 17, postmarked in Virginia, Iowa, and Oklahoma. Dennis was a fugitive for almost a year after the murder, after initially fleeing from police and escaping arrest. He went into hiding and started living under the pseudonym Hank Queen. On the 20th of March 1991, the case was first broadcast on Unsolved Mysteries at 8:30 p.m. that night. He met and stayed with a woman named Mary in Dallas. As soon as she arrived home and went inside, her boyfriend Hank told her that he had to leave soon because his mother was sick. He asked her to make him some sandwiches for the trip. She noticed that he was packing several items into a suitcase. He also seemed to distract her from what was on TV. He left a few minutes later in his van. Later that night, Mary learned that Hank was actually Dennis and that he'd just been featured on the broadcast. She believes that he was watching it, which caused him to leave. A friend of hers called the tele centre and gave them the license plate for his van. Louisiana state troopers spotted Dennis's van and they attempted to pull him over. He led them into Mississippi on a 15-mile high-speed chase and broke through 2 police barricades. Eventually, deputies fired at his back tyres and caused him to stop. After firing 3 shots at the deputies, he then turned the gun on himself and committed suicide before he could be taken into custody. Brook Baker was a 19-year-old student at Vincennes University in Indiana. She was extremely ambitious and looking forward to becoming a first-class journalist one day. Tragically, on the 7th of September 1997, her brother found her dead in her bed in her off-campus apartment. She had been brutally raped and stabbed to death. Although there were no signs of forced entry, there was evidence of a violent struggle between her and the assailant. Oddly, the water was still running from the bathtub faucet. As investigators began looking into the case, they discovered 3 possible theories as to who could have killed her. The first theory involves Brook's participation in journalism in Vincennes. There she became very active with the campus newspaper. In the spring of 1997, she was investigating an alleged date rape which occurred at the local fraternity. She interviewed several women who had run-ins with the fraternity members. However, they disliked her investigation into the case. They threatened her verbally and with emails. Brook was unfazed, but her mother, Janet Baker, was concerned about her safety. She responded that she was writing the story to keep others from becoming victims. A few weeks before she was killed, she was at a friend's house when a truck full of frat brothers arrived and threatened her. In order to feel safer, she moved to a new off-campus apartment in which the landlord was a campus police officer. The second theory was that the landlord was responsible. Brook told her family and friends that he would often come into her apartment unannounced at various times. One night, while she was sleeping, he shone a light inside. On another night, he came in while she was having a shower. She told a number of people that she was uncomfortable about the situation. Investigators believe he may have let himself in on the night of the murder. They had a confrontation and she was killed as a result. A third possible theory involving Brook's death was that a person posing as a potential roommate killed her. Just days before, she had placed an ad in the campus newspaper for a roommate for her apartment. Investigators believe that her killer may have read it and went there, claiming to be a potential roommate. They believe that she let him in and he killed her. This theory was supported by the fact that there was no evidence of forced entry into her apartment. Meanwhile, investigators began looking into the physical evidence they had in the case. They tested DNA samples they found on Brook with more than 50 suspects, but none of them matched. Then they started to question her cousin about the case. She had been staying with Brook, but moved to California 1 week before her murder. She had reportedly been unwilling to answer any questions from investigators. It is not known what information she may have on the case. Brook's parents, along with other family and friends, were hoping for answers. Investigators suspected the frat brothers, where an alleged date rape occurred that Brook was investigating, were involved in her murder. Another possible suspect was her bizarre landlord. They also looked into the possibility that a killer posed as a potential roommate, answering her ad. However, none of these theories could be confirmed. The case was solved after investigators searched the apartment of missing Vincennes college student Erica Norman on the 5th of July 1999. They were shocked to discover a nearly identical crime scene to that of Brook's, including water running from the bathtub faucet. Her body, however, was not found in her apartment. A man named Brian Jones was soon brought in for questioning after investigators learned that she was last seen alive with him. After interviewing him, investigators learned that he was a roommate of a man who was dating Brook before her murder. He gave the police a DNA sample and was found to have conclusively matched semen found on her body and DNA under her fingernails. He was then arrested and charged with her murder. When Erica's body was found 2 weeks later, Brian pleaded guilty to her murder, and in exchange the death penalty couldn't be used at Brook's trial. It was also noted that he had scratches all over his face on the day of her murder. Shortly before it, he rented a movie about stabbing a girl to death and washing the knife in a sink. On December the 14th, year 2000, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Brook and Erica's murders.